Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the North Planning Committee. I'm Councillor Reggie Lowry, the Committee Chairman. I'll do the usual administration first and then I'll take us through the running order for tonight. Apologies for absence first, please.
No apologies.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest in matters coming for tonight's meeting? Nope. Minutes of the meeting 9th of January in your bundles. Can I take those as agreed? Agreed. Okay. There are no matters notified in advance or as urgent. There are 4 items, 3 of which have a petition in part 1, i.e. the public part of the meeting tonight, and we have 1 enforcement matter in part 2. Once we get to part 2, the meeting goes into private session and the YouTube feed will be cut. Tonight's meeting is on the Council's YouTube site. Those of us round this end of the table are visible at the moment, and anybody who sits at that table to address us will also be visible. Beyond that, we have no audience. The audience isn't actually seen. We are not expecting a fire drill tonight, so if the fire alarm goes, we will be taking it as real. Fire exit through that door and through the next door down the stairs, and there's one in this corner behind me, if that one isn't appropriate. Can I please ask that all mobile phones are now switched off or to silent? For all items tonight, members have obviously had a pack for a week or so now. Officers will give a presentation outlining the main features of each item. For the petition items, petitioners have a right to address us for 5 minutes. That's you get a green light for 4. When it goes amber, you have a minute left, and when you get to red, that's your lot, and we will stop you. On any item where there is a petition, regardless of whether the petitioners choose to address us or not, applicants or their agents have a right to address us, as do ward councillors. The only comment I have is that I have a note from Councillor Melvin in relation to item 6. I am not aware there is any other intention for ward councillors to speak tonight. When you've done your presentation, members may ask you questions of clarity. If they don't be upset. It just means they've understood what you said. If you raise any new planning issues that are not covered in the report, I will take those up with the head of planning at the end of the meeting. There are 8 people with a vote round the table tonight. I get a vote if they can't make their minds up. If they get to a tie, then it comes down to me. Other than that, I don't vote. Starting at we'll start at the bottom end of as far as my eyesight will get tonight. Councillor Hagger, followed by Councillor Higgins, Councillor Tuckwell, Councillor Radia, and Councillor Flynn. Coming down the table on this side, Councillor Oswald, Councillor Hansbury, and Councillor Farley. Richard Michalski is doing highways. Mandeep Malhotra is the presenting officer tonight. James Roger, the head of planning, will offer us the usual advice. Luke Taylor from Democratic Services is our clerk. Glenn Egan is our legal advisor. Democratic Services is always grateful for any feedback, and I spy some orange forms just at the back of the hall if you wish to do so. I'll move straight then, please, to item 6, which is 31 Frithwood Avenue, Northwood.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. There's a short addendum on this item. The application is being reported to committee with a recommendation for refusal. We run through the application proposals. The site is located on the corner of Frithwood Avenue. The proposals are only seeking the change of use of this current bed and breakfast facility. There have been other applications on the site which sought extensions. The extensions were refused and were dismissed on an appeal. So this application is purely seeking the change of use from a bed and breakfast facility to a 7-room care home. So it's an existing 12-room bed and breakfast, for clarification. These are the existing and the proposed floor plans for the ground, first and second floors. The existing elevations do not change, although the internal layout does change ever so slightly. This is one of the plans that was provided by the applicants. You'll note that there is an error on this plan which refers to rear extensions. Now, there are no extensions. I think this was just a resubmission of a plan from the extension application, and there is an informative proposed to say that this application does not have any extensions in the event that it's appealed against. The proposed ground floor layout does change slightly, predominantly because we're going from a 12-bedroom bed and breakfast to a 7-bedroom care home. The communal area is to the rear. there is an office at the front, and the other rooms are the 7 rooms accommodating the care home, which are also provided for within the roof. The application has been recommended for refusal. There are some photos of the application site. It's a traditional looking dwelling house in a predominantly residential area, albeit it is currently used as a bed and breakfast facility. The application is refused for 2 reasons. There are issues with the perceptions of crime, and also due to the unknown care packages for each of the occupants of the care home. It's uncertain whether there is likely to be an increase in the comings and goings as a result of the new use. So we're talking about things such as ambulances, cars, not just visitors, but also doctor servicing those within the care homes, without knowing that this is a residential area and there is the likelihood that there is going to be significant, or the potential to have significant disturbance by virtue of those comings and goings. The application is recommended for refusal.
Thank you. Petition on this one, Mr. Shirling. If you'd like to come forward, if you press the button on the middle of the microphone, it'll light up. As you begin to talk, we will start the timers.
Okay. I am Trevor Shirling, Planning Officer for Northwood Residents Association. I'm here today because the 2 lead petitioners are unable to attend for family reasons. They asked the NRA to present their case, and I am the NRA representative. There are 2 petitions, one by local residents and one by Frithwood Primary School parents and carers. Please note, the residents and parents do not object to the housing of vulnerable individuals within the community. However, this location does not appear appropriate given the reasons in the planning report, and as we are highlighting today. Frithwood Avenue and Canterbury Close are quiet residential roads and would be impacted by the proposed change of use, particularly with regard to the personal safety of local residents and the impact of noise from the traffic from the home staff and visitors. In addition to the local residents, there is Frithwood Primary School for 3 to 11-year-olds, and many of the older children, but still 11 or younger, currently make their own way to and from school using the back gate. Those children have no alternative but to walk past the property and would be at daily risk of encountering a patient from the home. The proposed use includes housing young adults over 18 years of age, so very different to a care home for the elderly, including sufferers from dual diagnosis impairments, which is defined generally as severe mental health issues like schizophrenia and bipolar, together with a second ailment such as drug and alcohol addiction. The petitioner spoke to a doctor who advised those suffering from uncontrolled schizophrenia commonly shout and swear and may carry out physical assault, whilst those with bipolar disorder can be rude and aggressive. Whilst the applicant says their clients sometimes may have a dual diagnosis and sensory impairment, there is real concern that the number of such patients could significantly increase over time. The Planning Officer's report has highlighted how the proposed use would undermine the quality of life of the local residents, and indeed residents and parents have stated their daily fear would be of an unaccompanied patient getting out from the home and mingling with residents and school children, with the serious risks that would involve to their safety and well-being. Quoting from an email from the headmistress of Frithwood Primary School to the petitioner, "We already have another residential home within metres of the school and have had several complaints from parents and members of the community about vulnerable adults living there making lewd remarks to our children coming to school and playing in Frithwood Park. These matters were reported to the police by us. Keeping our children safe is paramount. What would any member of the council say about their decision-making regarding this in the event of a serious incident?" The Planning Officer's report refers to security measures that should be implemented, recognising the potential risk of patients getting out of the home unaccompanied, but also states that it would be very hard to ensure compliance at all times. The roads are quiet, with houses spaced out and set back, so if there was an incident involving an unaccompanied patient who got out of the home and who encountered a local resident or school child who needed to shout for help, there is far less likelihood here of them being heard. There is also concern at the level of traffic movements in what is currently a quiet residential area with little movement at each end of the day, that is likely to increase with staff movements, particularly at shift changeover times and visitor movements. There were 2 petitions. The school's parents and carers petition has 130 signatures, and the residents' petition has 98 signatures. That is in addition to the 167 objections, which together emphasises the real concern of local residents and the school. The planning officer's report is detailed and states that imposing planning conditions would not overcome the identified problems, and that the use is incompatible with its location in a quiet cul-de-sac. The petitioners have real concerns about security failures, as well as an increase in the amount of noise and traffic. However, clearly, the real risk of security failures in particular rests with the local residents and the school children. In conclusion, the petitioners endorse the planning officer's report and look for the planning application for the change of use to be refused.
Thank you for that. Anybody have any questions? No. If I could just ask you to turn that microphone off for me. Thank you. Then, no, there's no questions for you. Anybody here on behalf of the agent or the applicant? Nope, no one's indicating. I have Councillor Melvin sent a note, so I will read that to you now. Firstly, I'm sorry I cannot be with you this evening. Unfortunately, I have a previous commitment, but I felt it important that my concerns and objections be heard regarding the above application. Having read the planning officer's report, I'd like to make the following comments. As we have seen from the report, this is the latest inappropriate application for this property, and whilst it has been scaled down from the previous application in respect of now only wanting 7 occupied rooms, it is still asking for a care home for persons with early onset dementia, but more worryingly also for those with dual diagnosis impairments, a condition which is generally defined as severe mental health issues, and it is accepted that the people with this condition can be dangerous in many respects. It is therefore hardly surprising that many of the local residents and the Northwood Residents Association are very concerned. Also, that with Frithwood School for 3 to 11-year-olds in very close proximity, parents and the school governors are objecting most strongly, adding their signatures to the petitions. I'm sure the petitioners have covered many of the reasons for their objections to this new application, so I will not go over them again. I know there have been many letters of complaint voicing their worries on the possibility of localised criminal behaviour, and I am in agreement with these concerns. The Metropolitan Police, also being concerned, have made 9 recommendations, including CCTV covering outside areas around the amenity space near Frithwood Park and the close-by Northwood Frithwood Conservation Area. I would conclude by saying I strongly object to this application and fully support the residents and others in seeking that the committee will respect the recommendation of officers and refuse this new application. That concludes presentations. Councillor Higgins, can I ask you to open, please?
Yes, I will. I do sympathise with the residents, and I think that the report was quite thorough, and it's dealing with the planning issues that obviously we have to deal with here. So I recommend put forward a recommendation for this application to go forward.
For refusal,
for
as per the officer report. Councillor Flynn, you indicated?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. While one understands that these sort of facilities do need to be located somewhere, this location does not, to me, seem to be suitable for the reasons that we've heard about, particularly given the proximity to the primary school. So, because of that, it's not a suitable location. I'm very happy to second that recommendation for refusal.
I see no other hands, so I'm taking it nobody else has got any other issues with this one. I am proposed and seconded that this application be refused for the 2 reasons given in the officer report. All those in favour of refusal, please show. Thank you. That one's refused. Okay. I now move to item 7, the rear of 17 to 21, the Close Eastcote Penner.
Thank you, Chair. There is a short addendum on this item, which is primarily corrections, but there is the addition of one further condition, which requires the premises to be used for B1 purposes only. By way of a verbal update, it's also proposed to add an additional informative, which advises that the amenity area that's shown on the plans that you have in the plan pack is for the use of the B1 or the office occupiers and shall be for no other purpose. So the application site is shown in red on this plan. This is probably slightly clearer in showing that this is the town centre area. So it's essentially an amalgamation of a few gardens from the close, which is located, a residential street located here. The application proposes the erection of a 2-storey office building. The principle of the commercial development on the site was unfortunately established by a planning inspector who overturned a refusal of planning permission and allowed an appeal for this development. Now, in order to provide you with some clarification on how similar the proposals are, for avoidance of doubt, this is the plan that was allowed in the appeal in 2009, and it is identical to the current proposals. So whilst we might have felt in 2009 that it was unacceptable, the inspector did allow it, and unfortunately the area and our policies has not moved on to the extent that a recommendation for refusal we feel could be substantiated. Residents of the close have expressed objections to this application on the grounds of overlooking and lack of privacy. However, the distances between the houses in the close and the new build, with the proposed fencing and the existing tree cover, mean that the development will only have limited visibility from the properties in the close. Certainly not to a degree that would warrant a refusal of planning permission. As this is an outline application with all matters reserved, landscaping and design of the building can be conditioned with further details submitted at a later stage. The site is not within a flood zone or critical drainage area. The application has been reviewed by the Highway Authority, who are satisfied that the proposal would not exacerbate congestion or parking stress and would not raise any highway safety concerns. Accordingly, the application is recommended for approval. I will take you through some photographs of the site. So it's currently just fenced off. So these are photos of the surrounding area. This is the frontage of the close. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. West, do you want to? You know the process, so if you would just press the button when you're ready, we'll start at this end.
Good evening, members. I am representing the residents of the Close, and we would like to reiterate our objection to the outline planning permission. We have read the officer's report. As you are aware, the current applicant took ownership of the land in September 2015. Prior to that, there has been a long history of planning applications. To date, all of the applications, be they commercial or residential, have been refused by the Planning Committee. There have been 3 appeals to the Planning Inspectorate, 2 have been refused and 1 was allowed in 2009, the one you have just mentioned. It is that appeal and 2 subsequent appeals which I will now refer to. In 2009, the Planning Inspectorate allowed 1 application on appeal. However, the permission subsequently lapsed without implementation due to the difficulty of the then current owners to implement the necessary schedule of conditions. The schedule of conditions contained substantial reference to environmental issues, including the existing trees and how they would be retained in the adjoining properties and how the development would be screened. 2 further appeals have been refused, 1 in 2012 and 1 in 2007. Both of these refusals do take account of the 2009 decision, and we would ask you to bear this in mind. In 2012, the proposed development was a 2-storey B1 class office development with the same height as the appeal approved in 2009. The application followed an outline planning permission with all matters reserved. The Planning Inspectorate dismissed this appeal, and one of the reasons he gave was that the second floor height could not be screened by vegetation appropriate for residential garden boundaries. The development would also result in significant loss of residential amenity. It is worth pointing out that the second floor height of that development would have been 5 metres high, which is the same as the case for the current outline application you have before you today. In November 2017, he also refused an appeal for a 2-storey bungalow. In paragraph 8 of the Planning Inspector's report, he clearly stated that he had been mindful of the decision taken in 2009 for an office development, and then he goes on to say that the introduction of a dwelling in this location would appear as incongruous and uncharacteristic form of development. which would result in an adverse effect on the character and appearance of the area. The proposal would therefore conflict with policy BE1 of the Hillingdon local plan. In addition, in 2005, the Planning Committee acknowledged that it felt it would be impossible to screen a commercial property of 5.5 metres high, which sat within 1.5 metres of the boundary line. The property in your report is 5.5 metres high. In both refusals, the issue has been around the height, which is currently 5.5 metres high. This would be level with our first floor bedroom windows. It would be visually uncharacteristic view from the rear of our properties and would cause substantial overshadowing. Whilst the area is not within a flood zone, the properties lie between two car parks. It has been acknowledged by the council officers that the design of the Devonshire car park is such that water drains towards the properties of the if we have flash flooding, we are subjected to additional waterlogging in our gardens. Whilst we appreciate this is not a reason for refusal at this stage, we would ask you to think as a responsible local authority about the potential forthcoming risk factors. Lastly, we do acknowledge that some form of building may be beneficial. However, it has to be carefully considered in light of its location and proximity to the other residential properties. Taking into account the most recent planning inspectorate refusals, we recommend you refuse the outline planning application. Thank you for your time.
Do members have any questions? No, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
No, lovely. No, very well presented. Thank you. You just turn off your microphone for me. Thank you. Is there anyone here on behalf of the agent or the applicants? No one's sticking their hand up. No ward councillors. I'm just going to open this one up. I have the basis of the officer report is that we are constrained by the 2009 precedent, which of course is absolutely true. The refusal of residential on this site I can understand because it would be incongruous, and I accept that. What I am puzzled by is the 2012 decision. And what are the differences between the 2012 decision, given that the officer in their report referenced that plan and this plan as being very much the same? I'm sure there is an explanation, but I just can't quite see it at the moment. Perhaps officers would help me? Because otherwise somebody else is going to ask the question, so if they don't...
No, we don't have slides. If I'll be honest, so this plan indicates that there is tree cover to the rear of the properties on the close. Hence the reason that officers are satisfied that there's sufficient tree cover that exists. We could provide it in a proposal. Whether it would reach 5.5 metres or whether it would need to reach 5.5 metres is arguable, as long as it's sufficiently providing an adequate screen. It's difficult to argue that it would be a reason for refusal.
Okay, I'm going to push this out for a second, but I'm still not comfortable with why the two. I think committee are going to need to understand what is the difference between the 2012 scheme and the scheme before us tonight. Because if it is in essence the same, I understand the 2009. If this is the same as 2009, we've got a difficult decision because the precedent will clearly influence us. If this is the same as the 2012, that was dismissed by the planning inspectorate on appeal. I think we need to understand more about the 2012. In other words, what were the plans, what were the heights, what was... I know the petitioner's presented some evidence, but I have got no other evidence in this report that talks about 2012. We'll see how members are minded in a moment, but I'd be minded to push this for deferral for further information. And I'll take Councillor... I'll go that way and that way. Because Councillor Higgins had indicated I was ignoring him quietly.
He always ignores me.
No, I don't.
Thank you, Chairman. No. I do have some issues with this. I mean, the picture shows trees, but that drawing doesn't show any trees behind it. And I would be concerned a big brick wall. Also, the photographs are a bit misleading. I mean, I've had a photograph of a street scene, which I'm thinking, oh, is that the street scene where it's going to be on the other side?
The street scene
is the street scene behind, because yes. I worked out that there was a roundabout there and thing. So, and we don't have any visuals of that that, is it a road or a lay-by? Or
It is a service road to a car park. I
Yes.
happen to know it very well,
Yeah.
so I know what it is. It is literally it's a service road down to the car park. You can just about see it on your left-hand side.
Yeah, which it's all just a bit confusing and a little bit. Well, I just don't think there's enough information for me to make a decision. So I would recommend a deferral. I'll put that forward to the committee.
Okay, I think Councillor Oswald.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. I was going to ask, have we got enough details? Because of what you've just said, and about what the planning inspectorate has commented on before. He's in and then he's out. I'm not comfortable with this. I would be quite happy to defer this until we get just a little bit more on the report and a little bit more detail.
I think we need more detail. I think we need those two planning decisions so we can actually understand what the inspectorate was up to.
Yeah, so I've just been shown an illustration of the 2012 plan. It is quite different, but I think we need to be showing you that on the PowerPoint, and we need to explain to you in the report why it is quite different.
Yes. Councillor Finn?
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues on this, but one thing I would say is it'd be quite nice to see some plans in a bit more detail about what they're proposing.
It's outlined with all matters reserved. You know that little wrinkle?
So there's not a lot we can go on, but...
Yeah, best to sketch, yes.
Yeah, I think in the absence of very little to go on here, I think it's better to try.
Yeah, I think we need to understand what the 2012 is. It looks like it could be the 2012 was bigger. That could be a possible, but I think we need that analysed properly in a report, and then we can make our decisions. I am proposed and seconded on a deferral. All those in favour of deferral, please show.
Through you, Chairman. I know it's all matters reserved, but in this instance, if it comes back to committee, I would like to see a bit more of those here. I mean, it is a very small area and it's backing onto properties. I think we as a committee would really, really like to have more information than just an outline, a drawing. I mean, I was really concerned on that building of how it would be designed or how it would be built. It could be, it's so ambiguous that it could be all breeze block and a few windows in it, you know.
At the moment, it is one big blank wall.
Exactly. So, I mean, I'm really concerned that, you know, make sure that officers do come back, that if there is some design things, that it comes back to the lead and to yourself.
Yes, the head of planning will comment.
Just to give further advice in response to that. So the applicant, to a certain extent, the applicant has put in an acceptable amount of information in terms of whether we can determine it, and they've done exactly the same as the previous application. That's not to say we can't ask them if they'd volunteer more information to help committee make a favourable decision, but ultimately, if they decline to provide further information, we would have to determine it on the existing plans.
Yeah.
Again, through you, Chairman, I appreciate that, but we are constantly tied in this committee with this, and it is very, for us, it's very difficult. We, you know, I remember one. I'm not going to refer to other applications, but other applications, other applications have come out, and because we didn't mention anything, it comes back to us and we're not allowed to mention it. I'm going to be very clear that I'm not happy with this.
I think your concerns are noted.
Yeah.
And it may be that we haven't information, we may need to tweak some conditions to make sure. Committee do want officers to ask for further information. If we don't get it, we'll have to look at it as it is, and then we take it from there. But I certainly want to understand the 2012 position, because that has a material bearing on the recommendation. We are proposed and seconded for a deferral. Can all those in favour of deferral show me? Thank you. That one is deferred. It will come back to a future meeting of committee. I can't guarantee when that will be. It does mean at the moment your petition has been heard, though. So, okay. Thank you for that. I now move to item 8, 1 Manor House Drive, Northwood.
Thank you, Chair. Item 8 at 1 Manor House Drive is an application for the erection of a 2-storey building with habitable roof base to include 5 2-bedroom self-contained flats. If I take you through the plans, the application site is highlighted in red, located at a corner junction of Ducks Hill Road and Manor House Drive, as per its name. This is the site plan for the proposal. So the car parking layout is shown at the front. Its depth is only just slightly greater than its adjoining property, but it does project significantly along Manor House Drive as a proposal. The existing ground floor plan, proposed first floor plan, and the proposed floor plans throughout the building. It does become a substantially greater building. For context, there is a street scene that's provided showing the buildings within its immediate vicinity. So the proposed development is this building here, and you can see the road in the middle. This is the proposed street scene, so with the frontage, so there is a slope in the road, hence the reason that there are slight variations in height. The application is not the first for this site, so we had an application in 2016 which was dismissed at an appeal. So for comparison, I thought it would be useful to understand what we had previously refused and that has been dismissed by the Planning Inspectorate, which is at the top, and then the current proposals at the bottom. Now, it does, if you have any questions about that, I can bring the screen back up. There is additional planting proposed on the top image, but I think that's just in terms of what's in.
Thank you. Could I just ask, the house on the right-hand side there, is that building as high as the one proposed here? Is the proposed building that we're determining this evening, is that higher than the one on the right-hand side?
Yes.
It is?
Yes. The proposal is higher than the property at number 70.
They look quite similar.
It's higher than this property here.
No,
Sorry.
I mean the one to the right of that.
To the right.
the very right-hand end one, 68.
So they look quite similar.
Okay, can we...
Sorry, they are fairly similar. We had 5 reasons for refusal previously. However, the current application is also being refused by virtue of the design, the scale and the bulk, which is considered to be out of character, not in keeping with the street scene in the neighbouring conservation area, as well as the proposed living accommodation being inadequate. The application is recommended for refusal. I'll take you through some photographs of the site. So this is the existing building in situ. So I think you were referring to this property. Yes, so this is the one in the distance that you can see that I think because of the slope of the land, it's a lot less prominent that it might be a slightly higher building because you are travelling down Ducks Hill Road when you're viewing these. And that's the flank elevation as existing, so it's not as if it's a small flank elevation, but we're looking at an increase in that flank, and that is obviously the only view you have from Manor House Drive. And that's it in its corner location. And that's the rear of the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Petition on this one, Martin Coffey.
Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Martin Coffey, a resident of Manor House Drive. I am one of the 2 lead petitioners and my house faces onto the proposed development. The petition was signed by 33 residents of Manor House Drive and it asks this committee to refuse this application. Our principal objections to this application, which are detailed in our petition letter and supported by a number of photographs, can be summarised as follows. Overdevelopment of the site, which is not that large and which currently comprises a single detached house and garden, including the loss within the site of much open space. The unacceptable loss of privacy for numbers 2, 3 and 4 Manor House Drive resulting from the proposed fenestration. The effect of the proposed flats on traffic movements and on the likely amount of on-street parking which it would generate along Manor House Drive. And finally, the likely arrangements for the removal of refuse, recycling and garden waste from the property are likely to produce problems for the local residents. The proposed building, which in our view is basically the same as the previous application which the committee refused,
would, by reason of its scale, width and proportions and its architectural style, be massively out of keeping with the neighbouring houses. In short, would be far too big for the plot, and I note that the officer's report accepts this criticism of the scheme. Manor House Drive is, as a matter of information, a cul-de-sac containing 17 detached houses, and we do not agree that the road is suitable for the erection of flats. The windows at the rear of the proposed building will look directly into the front windows of number 2, 3 and 4 Manor House Drive. As I understand it, many of those windows at the upper levels will be living rooms and not bedrooms as existing. As a result, privacy will be adversely affected. Given the nature of the public transport in our immediate area, it is likely that the occupants of each of the proposed flats will have at least one car. Given the limited on-site parking and no visitor parking, it is inevitable that a number of those cars will be parked on Manor House Drive, which is unsuitable for more on-street parking. We already suffer from lengthy periods of day and night-time street parking by residents of some of the houses on Ducks Hill Road, often taking up virtually half the length of the road, and sometimes with vehicles parked with their wheels on the grass verges or on the pavements. And the submitted photographs hopefully will verify this. I note from his report that the planning officer recognises that there are already some parking stress in Manor House Drive, and that the proposed development will result in further on-street parking demand, which will increase on-street parking stress in Manor House Drive, as Ducks Hill Road is unsuitable for on-street parking. There is also access and egress problems for HGV vehicles, especially refuse collection vehicles, which often have to drive on the pavement to get past parked cars and vans, and the photographs submitted hopefully support this. Finally, we are concerned about the practical arrangements for the removal from the property of household waste, recycling and garden waste, considering the likely obstruction of the proposed entrance and the adjacent verge and pavement by parked cars. In addition, we note from the council's website that bins are not supposed to be placed on pavements, but are to be put on private land immediately adjacent to such pavements. We are also concerned about possible disrupted access to 2 Manor House Drive by piled rubbish bags. We do not believe, therefore, that the likely refuse collection arrangements are workable or satisfactory. Chairman, that's all I want to say. Thank you very much for your patience, and I'll answer any questions if there are any.
No questions, I think, by the look of my colleagues' faces, so that's good.
Thank
you very much indeed. Can you just turn the microphone off for me?
Oh, certainly.
Yeah, thank you. I don't sense an agent or an applicant. There isn't one. No ward councillors on this one. Perhaps the head of planning, I think, is gone.
I can quite quickly address a number of the concerns raised by the petitioner, if it helps committee, because what I can do is cross-reference the appeal decision. So the inspector did look at, from the previous scheme at parking, and obviously that was for an additional flat, and the inspector was comfortable on parking. It wasn't dismissed on that reason. It was because of the scale and bulk, which is obviously we still have, as officers, have concerns over. The inspector did have an issue which was reflected in officer concerns with the larger scheme about the impact on number 70, but that related to a larger rear projection than the current proposal, and it's for that reason officers think that that concern has been overcome, and the inspector did concur with officers' views that the council shouldn't be allowing something that fell below the various technical standards for internal floor space, but the applicant has addressed that in the current application. So effectively this report is really just following on from the inspector's decision and saying that the applicant has addressed all the reasons bar one, and that one is obviously it's a quite important one, that the building is, in officer's opinion, still has an unacceptable impact on the character and appearance of the street scene. Thank you, Chairman.
My thanks to the head of planning for that clarification, which I think is helpful. Councillor Flynn, then Councillor Hagger, and then Councillor Higgins, I think. Oh, no, Councillor Higgins is setting out of this one. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I must be honest, looking at the plans, I think this is quite a close decision for me. I can understand what the officers are saying in terms of the size of the building, but knowing Duxhill Road, there are quite a lot of quite large, sizable, flatted developments in that area. So it's a pretty close on balance decision. That's why I was asking that question about the property nearby. I think just about on balance I support officers, but for me it's quite a close one, this.
Councillor Hagger, you were next, then Councillor Higgins is now re-indicated, so...
Thank you, Chair. I don't actually agree. I think it's massive. I mean, it is size and bulk, so completely agree with the officer's recommendations and would second that.
So you would support refusal. Okay, that's good. Yeah, propose it. That's a good one. Councillor Higgins. Did you propose?
No, I did.
You did, you? Oh, I see. I didn't quite get that in the middle of all the rest of it. Thank you for seconding. Before I put it to the vote, Councillor Higgins, did you want to come in?
Yeah, just a quick thing. Sorry, I have to agree with Councillor Hager rather than Councillor Finn on this. Yes, if it was a house, if it was actually going to be like another detached property, I don't have an issue really with it to a certain extent, apart from a little bit. It's a little bit big, but you know, we could get around that. But for flats, it's just unacceptable. So that's my view. Anyway, so.
Anybody else got a view on this one? No, we are proposed and seconded to support the officer recommendation for refusal with one reason. All those in favour of refusal, please show me. Thank you. That one's refused. Good. I then move to item 9, non-petition item 186, Field End Road, Eastcote, Penna.
Thank you, Chair. There is an addendum on this item. Reason for refusal 3 has been clarified to ensure it's accurate in the event of an appeal. 186 Field End Road is shown in red on the map, forms part of the town centre. The block plans are quite not that helpful, in indicating that there is a small building between what is the application site and then the next building along in the street scene. It's easier to tell from the street scene what I'm referring to. So number 184 it's an unusual arrangement for a high street. It's not a traditional layout. The existing elevations demonstrate that more clearly. So predominantly we do have 4-storey buildings. The application site is a 2-storey with a pitched roof, and then there is a very small property at number 184. The application proposes effectively to replicate what it is adjoining, however not very well. So the application is recommended for refusal by virtue of its design, scale and bulk, and primarily its impact on the conservation area within which it sits. Just wanted to draw your attention to a previously refused scheme at the application site, which is shown on the first image, and the current proposals which are shown underneath. There is a slight change. There is the height of the roof has been brought down, so in essence I believe the changes are to meet our requirements for subservient extensions. However, it's not gone to the extent that's required to make it appropriate in the conservation area. Accordingly, it's recommended for refusal. We do have some photographs of the existing premises and its context within the street scene. Thank you.
Members, Councillor Oswald.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, it's a good report, and I think it's probably, on reflection, it's probably about right. I'll move the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Higgins.
Second that.
Okay.
Nothing else.
That's it. Oh, I get nothing else. Okay, nobody else indicating to speak, so we are moved and seconded to refuse as per the officer report. All those in favour of refusal, please show me. That one's refused. Thank you very much. Can I ask now for a member of the public to leave us, and also for the